All right, we have a special guest joining us now. Jason Whitlock joins me now. Jason is, of course, the host of Fearless with Jason Whitlock right here on Blaze Media. Jason, good to see you.
Good to see you, Liz.
All right, Jason, what do you think this means? RFK Jr. endorsing Trump, but this is the nuance that a lot of people are ignoring. Not officially dropping out of the race himself. He's just sort of telling people in swing states to, instead of voting for him, to vote for Trump. Is this going to tip Trump over the edge? Is he going to win?
Is it going to tip him over the edge? I think it helps. I think it helps more than just at the ballot in terms of votes. He's a symbol now of what men need to do in terms of, hey, he's going against what his wife wants him to do, what many people in his family want him to do. And so when he made this announcement, I immediately thought of Matthew 10 and verses 34 through 36 in terms of, like, Jesus comes with a sword and he's going to set son against father, daughter against mother. There will be division when you choose a side. And so I think a lot of men are caught in the position that RFK was in, like wife, family, not on board with Trump support. And so I think this is a level of courage that other men need to emulate. That, you know, we have to stand for what we believe in, and if it causes strife within our family, and we think this is what God wants us to do. In his speech, I thought he spelled that out pretty clearly, that he feels like a once in a lifetime opportunity to do something about a medical crisis with young people that he believes in. And so he's pushing all of his chips into the table, into the middle of the table, and I hope other men and women as well, follow his lead. We have to obey God and take some real risk here at this time, because we're living in a very unique time where all of our freedoms are in jeopardy. So hats off to RFK, and yeah, I think it's going to help Trump, but more importantly, I think he set a standard for other men to follow.
Yeah, that's actually a very interesting point. I haven't heard anybody make this point, but it reminds me, I was reading a study the other day that said, and this is a religious study, this actually didn't have to do with politics, but it said that when a husband converts, it was specifically converts to Catholicism, although I assume it also applies or probably applies to Christianity. When a husband converts to Catholicism, 70% of the time, his wife also ultimately follows and converts to Catholicism, even if it's not immediately, as well as children from that marriage. And I thought, oh, that's very interesting. Like, it shows that this family structure and this dynamic within marriage where the man, and I know this is controversial to say, the man is the head of the household and the spiritual leader, really is bred into us innately, that when a man takes a courageous action, oftentimes his family follows. And I wonder if this demographic that the Trump campaign does struggle with, that Democrats are taking advantage of, which is women, specifically suburban women who vote often on the abortion issue. I wonder if your point, men voting for Trump because of RFK, and then this sort of marriage between Make America Great Again and Make America Healthy Again, if that's going to impact that specific demographic.
Yeah, I do, and I think it's a great marriage, because the message that RFK is carrying about young people and making them healthy again, it's going to resonate with women, and so who knows what's going to happen in his marriage. Who knows? This may be a bridge too far for his wife. It may be a bridge too far for his sister and other people in his family. But he's willing to live with those consequences. And that's why I say hats off to him. Obviously, I'm pro-marriage, pro-family, don't want to see that fall apart. But I'm more than pro-marriage and pro-family, I'm pro-God. And so the guy, if this is his calling, and that's what he feels like God has put on his heart, this health crisis that's going on with young people and children, and he has this one chance to make a difference, he has to live out that mission if he feels like that's what God wants him to do, and he'll deal with the consequences. But I think RFK is someone that will resonate with women, and particularly with women who either are married or want to be married. You know, I think some of these women that don't want to be married and think abortion is the most important thing, they may be unreachable. But I do think there are a lot of women that, you know, they may have thought one thing when they were younger, but looking at the results of the chaos and the stupidity that's overtaken America, and then you look over what's going on in the UK, I think people are starting to understand that there are consequences to matriarchal rulership and a society that's based on feelings, on satisfying everyone's feelings. That's you can't run an organized society based on feelings. It's got to be on something a little more grounded than just people's feelings. Because right now, I feel like a sausage and egg McMuffin. I'm hoping that feeling goes away because it's not a good feeling. Won't help me. It won't help make America healthy again. But anyway, we got to be grounded on something stronger than feelings.
Well, it does. Well, I mean, this is a feeling that I'm having right now, but it does feel like what you said, a once in a lifetime opportunity, though. I mean, we've been talking about, we all lived it through COVID. There were some of us who were kind of red pilled on all of big pharma and the corruption of the FDA and the CDC prior to COVID, but it wasn't necessarily a mainstream feeling or belief or experience before that. It was just a specific demographic of people who maybe have children who were harmed by vaccines, or there is a demographic of women who are around my age and they're 20s, 30s, or 40s who have been ignored, neglected, gaslit about autoimmune issues by big medicine because of its ties to big pharma. And so there are specific demographics who had experienced that, but I don't think until COVID, everybody in the country realized the depth of the corruption. And it's kind of demoralizing thinking like, how do we fix this? How do we get rid of this? But I feel, and this, again, I know this is a feeling, but I do feel excited about the idea of Make America Healthy Again, marrying Make America Great Again, because I'm not sure even Trump was fully red-pilled on the corruption of big pharma, given his support for some of the vaccines. But now with RFK by his side, I'm like, yeah, let's get this done. Let's get rid of that.
I think it's going to open up a major conversation, because what has transpired with me just over the last 3 to 4 years since the scales have come off my eyes, I was an irresponsible man that would get in relationships and require women to get on birth control. And again, since the scales have come off my eyes and figure like, holy cow, there are severe consequences for women getting on birth control and what it does to their immune system and other things with them. And so I'm just RFK and what we've experienced the last 4 years. Yes, it's been hard and it's been difficult, and I wish we didn't have to go through it. But I do think in terms of opening our eyes to just how unhealthy we are and how unhealthy a lot of the habits we've been given and how much control Big Pharma has been given over what we think through their control of mainstream television and just everything else. This has been a process that we've needed to go through, and it's unfortunate that it took all of this to get us to start having these conversations. But to see RFK be a part of the Trump administration and to be able to advance these conversations even further, it is an exciting time. And it feels like, as down as we may feel sometimes, it's like help is on the way. Things are starting to go our direction.
Well, listen, I don't say this to sound hyperbolic, but we are living history right now. If you think about just this specific campaign cycle or election cycle alone, we had a sitting incumbent president who was so mentally senile that he's not even running the White House. We then had his opponent, President Trump, of course, who was the victim of an assassination attempt. Then because of that, we had the Democratic Party, or the powers that be in the Democratic Party, depose Joe Biden, stage a coup, install Kamala Harris. Then we have this, which might be the greatest political marriage that we have ever experienced, the greatest political alliance we've ever experienced in the United States, RFK and Donald Trump here. What are the Democrats going to do to counter this? Because staging a coup, deposing Joe Biden in response to the assassination of Donald Trump was like something we've never experienced before in the history of this country. It was a big deal, even if the media acted like it was totally normal. What do you think they're going to do now for this? Because this is a pretty big bump of momentum for Trump.
It is. Their strategy is so based in deception that it's hard to predict. I said this to Tucker Carlson last week, Liz, that just the other historic thing that's going on right now that we're not really talking about is that we don't have a president right now.
Yes.
When has that ever happened in the history of America? No one knows who's running the country. And they're trying to normalize that. They want us to kind of get used to that, hey, there really isn't a president. There's this group of puppet masters behind the scenes that tell presidents what to do. And that's kind of their message. It's like, don't worry about Kamala. Who cares if she's not qualified? She can read a teleprompter. The regime, the deep state, will tell her what to do, no different than what we've been doing for the last 6 months since Joe Biden stepped aside, and really since the last 3.5 years since Biden's been president. But it's now like completely obvious, like we don't have a president. Who's running the country? And they're basically saying, don't worry about it. Same people running it now will be running it when Kamala's there, and the next election cycle will break a different glass ceiling, and someone else will get their turn at the wheel. It's crazy what we're living through. Not to make our time more important than any other time, but I just don't think we've seen this level of dysfunction and chaos just normalized.
At least not in our country. I mean, we forget that our country is relatively new by the standards of how long countries typically last. And this might be the craziest election cycle. I don't usually buy into the narrative that, oh, this is the most important election that we've ever experienced, because I actually think all of them are, because all of them lead to either a nation prospering or failing. But I don't think we've ever, dysfunction is the right word that you use, because I don't think that we've ever experienced this. I saw a number, by the way, yesterday. I think I was just reading articles, and I saw a number that said that Joe Biden has only been in the White House for like 6, 7, 8 days since he announced that he wasn't going to be on the ticket in November, that he's mostly been at his beach house. And it just confirmed to me, I mean, we reported on it at the time when it was reported. I think it was Charlie Kirk who first reported it. And he said, listen, Biden suffered a serious medical emergency in Las Vegas. They covered it up by saying that he had been diagnosed with COVID and was going to go into quarantine. But my bet, Jason, is that it was much more serious than was reported. And he wasn't just pushed aside. My guess is he is even more seriously capacitated than he was just with his mental decline.
I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the fact that there should be 2 daily conversations going on, in my opinion, like who's running the United States of America right now, and who allowed someone to take a point blank shot at Donald Trump. We have to fix those 2 deals. We got to figure out who's running the country and do something about it. And we have to figure out what agencies, FBI, CIA, who dropped the ball, who was perhaps in on the assassination attempt on our leading candidate for president. But instead, we spend a lot of time talking about joy. And literally, it was comical. The DNC, we have we're at the brink of World War III and nuclear conflict. And Oprah Winfrey shows up in Chicago to shout joy, and we're supposed to pretend like this was some amazing moment at the DNC, and this is like a serious campaign. And it's basically the BET Awards meets the Academy Awards for a political function. It's just not serious, and I just hope that RFK and President Trump and what they're doing, that combination does sober some people up. Like, hey man, we've got, you don't have to like them, and yes, they're flawed, but at least they're serious people. No one's going to argue that RFK is not a serious person and that he's not well researched, the books he's written about COVID and the medical issues and all that other stuff. This is a serious person. Donald Trump, serious businessman, 4 years as our president, got us out of conflict. Russia wasn't misbehaving the way that it was. He's got a serious record. Liz, I tweeted this out, that just the past week was the final thing to push me. I've never voted because I've never really...
You've never voted?
No, I've never really believed in
What?
politics. Yeah, I'm spiritual solutions. But I registered to vote this weekend. I'm definitely going to vote. And it just comes down to, for me, the only way the January 6 people get out of prison is if Trump is elected. And the only way we potentially avoid World War III is if Trump is elected. Though, these are serious, serious consequences, and I can't sit on the sideline.
Well, first of all, I'm shocked to hear that you've never voted. Although I also have another good friend who works in this industry. I'm not going to say his name because he'd probably be super mad, who also doesn't vote. And it shocks me out of my mind that people wouldn't want to do that. I'm so glad that you're voting. Welcome. It's an incredibly powerful thing to be part of self-governance. That's what your vote counts for. Even as the left tries to dilute our votes and steal our votes, it's still, we don't want to give that up. So welcome to being part of the voting electorate. I am excited to see actually all the new voters that I think are going to be registering probably today, probably tomorrow, based on RFK and Trump's new alliance. Jason, thanks so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it. It's always good to talk to you.
Thank you, Liz.